日本語を勉強しましょう。うどんうどんうどんうどん教室へようこそ。始めるぞ。
Hey everybody, Ben here, and today we have got an amazing lesson. Absolutely crazy lesson. It's all about verbs. Verbs and the O particle. O. This is going to be sick. It's one of my favourite things in Japanese. One of my favourite lessons. It's going to be ace. So, as you all know, today's lesson is going to be split up into 4 different sections. We're going to have, first off, we're going to have the vocabulary. Get those words in. Secondly, we're going to be having the grammar. We're going to learn how to string these things together. Then we are going to have a look at the all-important sentences, where we put these things into practice. And then lastly, a summary. We're going to summarize before your eyes. So, without further ado, let's go. Ikimashou! Okay, it's time for the vocabulary. So please excuse me as I look at my list, because I don't want to forget these things. So, the first of today's vocabulary is kyo, which means today. Now this time I'm not going to create up any stories for these because I think you guys are good at these already, and it's just, save some time as well. So kyo is the first one. The next is suru, which means to do. Suru, to do. Then we have benkyou suru, which means to study. Benkyou on its own is actually a noun, study. However, with suru, it becomes a verb and becomes to study. Benkyou suru. So next we have kuru, which means to come, the opposite of to go. Then we have aruku, which means to walk. Then we have nomu, which means to drink. Then we have taberu, which means to eat. Then we have miru, which means to see with the naked eye. Then we have yomu, which means to read. We all love to read. And then we have kaku, which means to write. So the way you can tell if a word in Japanese is actually a verb is the u sound at the end. Now all Japanese verbs, which are actions, end in u. Okay? All end in u, an u sound. So if you hear an u sound, it's more than likely going to be a verb. Now Japanese verbs are split up into 3 different groups based on the last syllable. They're split up into 3 different groups because when you change them or conjugate them into past forms, continuous forms, or into the mass form, and many other things, they all have different sets of rules. So when we split them into 3 different groups, it makes it a lot easier to understand. So let's look at these different groups right now. So group 1, iru and eru verbs. Okay, these are verbs that end in iru or eru. For example, miru, to see, or taberu, to eat. Now we have group 2. These are verbs that end with syllables like ku, gu, nu, bu, su, etc. I've got a full list next to me, so you won't miss out, okay? These are all the syllables for group 2. For example, aruku and nomu. Now finally, group 3 is made up of only 2 verbs, which is suru and kuru. Okay, so for group 3, you just have to remember suru and kuru. So group 3, we know that it's easy now. So let's move on. Now there are obviously going to be a few exceptions to the rule. However, if you remember these 3 groups, it will really help when it comes to conjugating in later lessons, maybe next week. Okay, so for now, let's move on and have a look at the particle o. Okay, we're going to be using o today, and we're going to be using that along with some dictionary form verbs that we just learned. Okay, let's go, cut the bullshit. The particle o marks the direct object of a Japanese sentence. It is what is done to an object or person, essentially marking the action. For example, hon o benkyou suru, to study a book. The O particle is marking what is being studied in this situation, what is being verbed in this situation. 신문を読む, 신문を読む, to read a newspaper. In this situation, the O particle is marking what is being read, and in this case, the newspaper is being read. So now let's take a look at a few sentences and make sure we understand exactly what's going on, and make sure that you guys can start using this from today, because it's your time to shine. It's your time to shine and make yourself proud and conquer your Japanese journey, and this is the key. 今日私は日本語を勉強する。今日私は日本語を勉強する。Today, I will study Japanese. 水を飲む、水を飲む。Drink water. パンを食べる、パンを食べる。Eat bread. テレビを見る、テレビを見る。To watch television. 私の本を読む、私の本を読む。Read my book. Read the book that belongs to me. ブログを書く、ブログを書く。To write a blog. An online blog, an internet blog, an offline blog. Wherever you want to write the blog, you can write it with o kaku, write the blog. So great job, my action stars. You now know how to use verbs in Japanese with the o particle to mark what you are going to take action on or to. So now, let's take a look at today's summary to ensure that we can keep that information in our brains, okay, and use it again and again and again and again. 今日 today. する to do. 勉強する to study. 来る to come. 歩く to walk. 飲む to drink. 食べる to eat. 見る to see. 読む to read. 書く to write. There are 3 verb groups that you should keep in mind for later lessons. Iru and eru verbs, group 1. U verbs, group 2. Suru and kuru verbs, group 3. The particle most commonly associated with verbs is o. The particle o marks the direct object of a Japanese sentence. It's what is done to an object or person, so essentially it marks an action.